A turn of the 19th century house, like a really common house. Like I think if a child was to draw a house, that's the house that they would draw, like the of houses. So they see a house and it's floating on the Atlantic Ocean, and it floats by the camera, and then it floats by the camera again, and it floats by, I think, 3 times, and then it comes in the other side and it starts to become a bit turbulent, and then slowly it starts to move really, really quickly. Or I shouldn't say slowly, it starts to move really, really quickly, and then it sinks. And that's what you see, but what you hear is also a whole other level of register, which is you hear a family gathering inside of a house, and you hear children and adults playing and laughing, and this kind of circular movement that's a synthesized water sound. So you hear this sense of you've got this sense of being pulled under, and you hear like seagulls and foghorns and weather, and it starts to overcome the family, and a teacup breaks and the house is subsumed under the water. In some ways, when you look at the installation, you have the illusion of something being perfect, and that's what you meant to see. And what happened on the day of the shooting was that the house, once we took it out, I wanted completely open sea without just a horizon and no reference to land. And once we started to move the house out, the water, I grew up in Nova Scotia, I know this, the water's super turbulent. I mean, it moves. It's part of what the piece is about, is that you put you have one force acting on another force, and it produces a condition that's very dangerous. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the conditions of danger, that life somehow, that we understand as a kind of primal fear in our lives. The period it references is kind of the mid-60s, a time of incredible change, societal change, in Canada, I think globally. One of the things is, it perhaps marks a point where this idea of an eradication of our almost feudal past. I know that sounds like misplaced in terms of a historical moment, but I'll give you an example. In Newfoundland, around that time, they decided to relocate all of the outlying ports in Newfoundland and bring all of those people who were living in a really rural setting, to bring them into urban environments, or at least serviced environments, like kind of suburban environments. And so what they did was they cut houses off at the foundation and they floated them into serviced areas. And to me, that right there, that historical moment and that event, and that idea of relocation, dislocation, and the peril that placed people in. I just thought that this image, this gestural image, spoke of much, much larger things, and nothing. And it's always more interesting when the thing is not specific and can become a generalized gesture that speaks a kind of a profoundness that isn't attached to a very, very specific thing, but really affects us more, like what happens when we're unmoored, what happens when we're on a body of water that's both safe and has the ability to flip you right over and consume you or subsume you. So all of that was stuff that I wanted to deal with. So in terms of memory, I mean, yes, there was a memory there, but there's also a memory of place. And when I say Newfoundland, in terms of Nova Scotia, it was the eradication of Africville. And that was a part of the history, or it was a part of the event that was the primary event that I was first referencing. It did come from that, and as a child I was very much aware of what was happening in Africville and felt very affected by it. Even though I was really, really young, it was something that I had a real sensitivity towards and was very upset by. So yeah, it's not specific in the work, but it ends up being a kind of echo in the piece.